All right, so we have a little bit of outside reading. I've put a link in there to an article on The Verge. It's about the Boeing 737 MAX and hardware architecture decisions that they made in it, and how those hardware architecture decisions impacted the safety of the plane. It's a casual read, maybe 5 minutes, but it's worth going and reading and seeing the relationship between architecture and things that are happening in the real world. Picking up on compilers, I promised to tell you about how modern compilers work. Now, this is kind of an interesting thing because, the way that they teach compilers, and in fact, I believe even here, I have not taught compilers here at the University of Wyoming, but certainly given the fact that they're using the Dragon-covered book, which is used by most compiler-level courses around the United States, and it depicts things this way, I expect this is the way they teach it, is not really the way that most modern compilers work. The goal of existing compilers is to find things that compile correctly. That's the way it's done for most of the compilers in this kind of a philosophy. If it doesn't compile, you get an error report. Well, most modern compilers, however, don't do that. They provide meaningful information in the development process, and to be able to successfully do that, they have to be able to compile code and analyze it that doesn't compile correctly, because in the middle of editing your program, almost never does it compile correctly. The one time when it compiles correctly is when you're done editing it, not in the middle. And in the middle is when you actually want this real-time data about what you're typing. So let me give you an example from C++. Let's say in your main program, you declare a string and you say stir equals. And you're sitting there right at the stir equals. Now, stir equals, you could be assigning to it another declared string. You could be assigning a character constant, which would be a constructor and a method applied to it, an assignment operator method that is overloaded on the equals operator. But at the moment when you've typed that much, it definitely isn't syntactically correct. You don't end lines or end statements in C++ with an equals. So the compiler has got to have lots of latitude to be able to compile things that don't make sense and be able to give us typed information about what the stir is and what the most likely thing is that the equals operator is. Is it a call to a method? Is it an assignment? And it has to be able to do this in about 100 milliseconds so that you can paint a box on the screen that lists the possible things that you would fill in after that equals. Now, suppose that this piece of code that you're working on is in 1,000,000 lines of code, something like Photoshop, and 80 different libraries are used in here. So it's got to have data on all of this, including the string library, to determine what it has to do. Now the user types a double quote, the beginning of a character constant. At the moment that they type that single character, suddenly the entire picture changes. Because now we know that we've got a string on one side and we've got a quoted character constant on the other. That the equals there is actually a overloaded equals operator in the language, in the string class. And we've gone from hundreds to maybe 5 different things that it could be, having to do with constructors, initial assignments, overloaded equals operators. And all of that information has to change in the next 100 milliseconds to be able to support this. So the constructor operator is probably the most likely in this case, with it doing a construction and creating a new string value from the thing on the right-hand side, followed by an overloaded assignment operator that allows it to take this character constant that's been constructed, converted to a string, and then assign it to stir. And that comes up as a pop-up box on your screen at that moment in time, with the typing information telling you, yeah, these are the different possible choices. This is what it could be, and this is how it has to interact. The key idea in making a compiler work in this compilation is that it has to be a service that works with the editor on the fly and gives near instantaneous responses. The compiler cannot afford to rebuild the code from scratch. That takes half an hour, And it has to have a pure functional data structure that it's constantly adding to. This partially complete abstract syntax tree needs to include not just what the user has, but also what the user could have in the next state, that it's possible to predict what the user is going to do. The solution to this is to have the parse tree and symbol table for the code being compiled and served for every module that gets compiled. Then the person types and adds new stuff to the data. It's able to react to that very quickly. Now, even some compilers like Go, where you don't have this kind of a capability, are built this way these days. If I go and compile something like the entire Ethereum package, which is hundreds of thousands of lines of code, the first time I compile it, it will take a few seconds. After that, I edit one little piece and I recompile, and in 0.4 of a second, it manages to recompile that piece I changed, add that to its set of syntax trees, look up all the links that it has to do, and run the linker and give me a result in 0.4 of a second. So the compiler still does that, even in the case where it looks like it's a compiler that works in the 1990s fashion. Now, in most of these compilers, at the moment when you finish editing the chunk of code is the only time that you see this behavior, that it's completed it, it's actually syntactically correct. The rest of the time, it's giving you interactive feedback at every step. And the way it does that is the compiler acts as a service and runs continuously. It's actually a web service that they make calls to, and that's where they get their nice pop-up information.